Well, happy Friday. We are completing another week of In the Word and finishing up in Revelation chapter 13 today. Exciting chapter, again, symbolic. I call this beasts. That's how I've labeled this one, is just simply beast, because two beasts are introduced here. One is the beast from the sea, and that's from verses 1 through 10. And then verses 11 through 18 is the beast from the earth. So who is this beast? That's the question that's being answered in verses 1 through 4. What is he doing in verses 5 through 8? And a warning about him in verses 9 and 10. Who is this beast? So interesting, although we often talk about the Antichrist, he's never mentioned in the book of Revelation. He's mentioned in 12 other passages in the New Testament, never mentioned directly, but I think this is the beast, or this is the Antichrist here, this beast from the sea. That interesting to note as you go through this. In verse 2, this is a description of the beast that appears also in Daniel chapter 11, verses 3 through 7. But John reverses Daniel's order. I think what's happening here is Daniel is looking at this beast in terms of history, and each of these figures, or each of these pictures here, a leopard, a bear, a lion, and leopard, bear, lion, and dragon, mentioned from John's perspective in history. So it's opposite of what Daniel sees. Daniel sees the from near to far. John sees from near to far, but he's looking back. Daniel's looking forward. So this is, as I said, the Antichrist. In my more extended teaching on the book of Revelation, which I'll be posting online, I go through it chapter by chapter. I spend a session in each chapter, so it gives us a little bit more depth. In that, I make the case, or the point, that the Antichrist is mentioned 12 times in the New Testament, so we have quite the description about him. Just for our purposes here, let me point you to 2 Thessalonians 2, 3 through 7 for some information about this figure. Also 1 John 2, 18 and 4, 3, and 2 John 7 as sources of information about the Antichrist. As you go through this, notice in verse 5 that he's allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Again, the Lord's in charge here. He's not abandoning the earth. He continues to be controlling what's happening, even to the extent that he is allowing the Antichrist to do certain things and preventing him from doing others. Also, in the warning section in verse 9, beginning in verse 9, verses 9 and 10, notice how he says, if anyone has an ear to hear, let him hear. So this is kind of echoing what we heard in chapters 2 and 3, but the warning there was to the churches. If anyone has an ear to hear, let the church hear what the Spirit says. Here the church is not mentioned. Again, I think evidence that the church is not on earth at this time, during this time of the tribulation. And what is he talking about here? If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword he must be slain. I think he's saying here that God's eternal plan is being completed here. God's eternal plan for salvation, for judgment, is coming to its conclusion. As I said in Revelation chapter 16, we'll see the final judgments, the bowl judgments poured out in rapid succession. So the time is drawing close here, is the point. The church is called to endurance and faith, and there will be salvation during this time. I think the time for that is ending, but there will be salvation, and unfortunately, so many who come to faith during the period of the tribulation will pay with their lives for their faith. Verse 11, then, we see a second beast, beast from the earth. I think this is what we call the false prophet. Notice how he's subordinate to the beast from the sea, the Antichrist figure. Verse 12 says he exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. So in its presence is alluding to the fact that he's being supervised, he's being directed, he's being allowed. Notice verse 14 as well, that there's going to be signs that he's allowed to work in the presence of the beast. It deceives those who dwell on the earth. So these are deceptive signs and wonders that are going to be demonstrated. In the Bible, there's basically 5 periods of signs and wonders that occur over the course of the biblical history. The first 4 sets of those signs and wonders are for believers. It confirms the word that's being spoken by Moses, by Elijah and Elisha, confirms the word that's being spoken by Jesus, confirms the word of the apostles. I think those signs and wonders have ended during the church age. They have come to an end during the church age. And the next set of signs, the 5th period, is what we see here in the book of Revelation, is that during the tribulation, there's going to be false signs, not to confirm the word. The word's been confirmed, but to deceive the vulnerable, to deceive the lost. And that's what we'll see, and that's what the world will see, and that's what we're seeing here. So I think people that point to signs and wonders today, I think they're mistaken. Certainly God can do miracles. I'm not denying that. Certainly he can do things like healings, but I'm not denying any of that. I'm just denying that the gift of these signs and wonders have stopped during this period of time, and they will resume, but there will be lying signs and wonders. There'll be a test for the believers at that time. So we see also in verse 16 that everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, so that's everybody, is going to be marked on their forehead or their right hand with the sign of the beast, so that they can't buy and sell. The sign is the number of his name, which the last verse tells us is 666. I don't think that the current COVID vaccination is the sign of the beast. I don't think that chip on our credit cards is the sign of the beast. We are not in the tribulation. We are not seeing the sign of the beast. Could it be something like this? Possibly. Could it be that these will be formalized into that sign of the beast? Maybe. But it says clearly here that it's going to be the number of his name. Most of the best manuscripts say that number is 666. There's a few that say 616. And I don't think that during this church age we'll be able to identify who the Antichrist is. I think this is for believers that are going to be alive during the tribulation. They'll have sufficient revelation at that time to know what is the name of this number. So this is a concept, I've heard it referred to sometimes as progressive illumination. They'll be able to bring things together from the Word that we can't do today, given our limited perspective. That they'll be able to look into what's happening, put things together in a way that we can't, and be able to identify the Antichrist. And let me leave you here with a couple of positive things. These are difficult chapters, chapter 12 and 13. I'd say number 1 is be optimistic, that the Lord is, these verses show us that even during the worst part of the tribulation, the Lord is faithful, the Lord is in charge, that his plan and his purpose that was determined in eternity past is being worked out in history, through history, and it'll continue to do that, and we can be confident in that, which is our second point. Not only be optimistic, but be confident, have utmost confidence in the Lord, that he knows what he's doing, and he is doing what he knows, and this is not out of control, but he's on top of it, and he is bringing glory to himself even during these dire times of the tribulation. And finally, I'd say the third option here is to be discerning. Again, I don't believe we are in the tribulation. I think we're seeing the stage being set for the tribulation. I think we're seeing the apostasy of the church during the time that we're living right now, and it's going to get worse until the Lord comes back and calls us to be very discerning, to be very careful. I'm reading a book right now called Acts 20, subtitled Fierce Wolves Are Coming, Guard the Flock by Alexander Strock. Book that's warning us, warning the church that we need to be on guard during these last days, urging leaders and through leaders to everyone in the church to be discerning at this time. So be optimistic, be confident, brothers and sisters, be discerning as you go into the weekend. I pray that the Lord is blessing you, that you are being encouraged by this ministry, encouraged by the word, built up or edified, that your knowledge is growing, and that you are being more and more equipped for the last days ministry of the church, which the Lord has called you to. So God bless you, brothers and sisters, and I'll see you Monday in Revelation chapter 14. God bless you.